The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a crystal cathedral, its walls humming with energy from 17 different star systems. Each member species had contributed something to its construction. The Zephyrians had grown the quantum crystal foundations. The collective had assembled the massive structure with their countless worker drones. The Luminals had powered it with captured starlight that would burn for 1,000 years. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked across the polished floor, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Behind her came the rest of the human delegation, 12 representatives from Earth and the 47 colony worlds humanity had built over the past century. They wore simple blue uniforms, nothing fancy or decorated. Humans had learned long ago that other species found their appearance unremarkable, even boring, that it always worked in their favor. At the center of the hall sat the council circle, 17 floating platforms arranged in perfect geometric harmony. Each platform held a different species, and each species looked down at the humans with expressions that ranged from curiosity to barely hidden contempt. The Zephyrians were tall and thin, their crystalline bodies catching and reflecting light in rainbow patterns. They thought in mathematical concepts that most other species could not understand. The collective spoke with one voice through hundreds of small insect-like bodies that moved as a single unit. The luminals existed as pure energy, contained within glowing spheres that pulsed with their thoughts. Counselor Prime Zethkalar rose from the highest platform. He was a tribunal, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. His scaled hide bore the scars of 1,000 years, and his 4 eyes had seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Humans of Earth," he began. His words translated instantly into a dozen languages. "You have petitioned for full membership in the Galactic Council. For 50 years, you have proven yourselves capable traders and reliable allies. You have fought beside us in 3 conflicts and honored every treaty you have signed." Elena nodded respectfully. This was going exactly as expected. The humans had done everything right, followed every rule, met every requirement. Full council membership seemed certain. However, Zethkalar continued, and Elena felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. "The council has concerns about your species. You multiply quickly. You spread across worlds with unusual speed. Your warriors fight with a ferocity that troubles many of our members." Murmurs rippled around the circle. Elena caught fragments of conversation in alien languages. The Melody delegates sang their concerns in harmonious tones. The verdant representatives rustled their leaf-like appendages nervously. "Therefore," Zethkalar said, raising one clawed hand for silence, "the Council offers humanity associate membership under the Tributary Accords." A crystalline data pad materialized in front of Elena. As she read the terms, her face remained perfectly calm, but inside anger began to build. The document demanded that humanity surrender 60% of their military vessels. It required all human genetic research to be overseen by Council scientists. Most insulting of all, it granted humans only limited voting rights on issues that affected their own worlds. "These terms," Elena said carefully, "are quite different from what we discussed during the preliminary negotiations." Counselor Vexithala of the Zephyrians spoke, her voice like crystal chimes. "The terms reflect the reality of your position. Younger species must prove their commitment to galactic peace through sacrifice. 6 other species have accepted similar arrangements," added Hive Prime Collect. "They now enjoy the protection and prosperity that comes with council membership." Elena looked around the circle. She saw the smug satisfaction on most faces. They thought they had humanity trapped. Join under humiliating terms or face isolation in a galaxy where the Council controlled all major trade routes and resources. "We request 48 hours to consider your generous offer," Elena said. Zethkalar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Very well. The Council grants this time for deliberation. We trust you will see the wisdom of acceptance." The human delegation left the Great Hall in silence. They walked through the corridors of Council Station Alpha, past alien merchants and diplomats who watched them with interest. Everyone knew that humanity's decision would be announced soon. In their private quarters, the human delegates gathered around a simple table. No one spoke for several minutes. Finally, Elena broke the silence. "They think we need them," she said quietly. 60% of our fleet," muttered Admiral Chen, a weathered woman who had spent 30 years defending human colonies from pirates and raiders. "They might as well ask us to cut off our own arms." The genetic oversight is worse, said Dr. Martinez from the Science Council. They want to control our biological development. Make sure we don't become too dangerous. Elena stood and walked to the window. Outside, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns. Somewhere out there were human worlds. Not just the 47 official colonies, but dozens of smaller settlements, research stations, and trading posts. Humans had spread far and wide in their brief time among the stars. What do the other species think of this? Asked Representative Singh from New Mumbai Colony. The ones who matter support it, Elena replied. The Zephyrians see us as chaotic and unpredictable. The tribunals think we're too aggressive. The collective believes we reproduce too quickly. And the others? Elena smiled for the first time that day. The Melodians have been asking about human music. The Verdants want to trade agricultural techniques. The Star Wanderers think we're kindred spirits, but they don't have enough votes to matter. Admiral Chen leaned back in her chair. So what do we do? Accept and spend the next century as second-class citizens? Or refuse and face economic isolation? Elena turned from the window. There is a third option. For the next 18 hours, the human delegation worked in shifts, sending encrypted messages to every human world and station. They spoke with colonial governors, fleet commanders, trade captains, and research directors. The conversations were brief and coded, but the meaning was clear. When Elena stood before the council circle again, she carried a simple data pad containing humanity's response. Zethkalar gestured for her to speak. The human species thanks the Galactic Council for its offer of associate membership, Elena began. We have given it careful consideration. The alien delegates leaned forward, expecting the inevitable acceptance. However, Elena continued, we must respectfully decline. Shocked silence filled the great hall. No species had ever refused council membership before. Furthermore, Elena said, her voice growing stronger, humanity formally withdraws from all Galactic Council territories and agreements. Within one standard year, all human citizens, vessels, and installations will relocate beyond council space. Councillor Vexathala's crystalline form flickered with agitation. This is madness. You cannot survive without council protection and trade agreements. We believe we can, Elena replied simply. Zethkalar's scarred face twisted with confusion and anger. You would abandon 50 years of cooperation? Throw away everything you have built here? Elena looked around the circle one final time. We're not throwing anything away, Councillor Prime. We're taking it with us. She placed the data pad on the floor and walked away. The rest of the human delegation followed without a word. Behind them, chaos erupted in the council chamber as 17 species tried to understand what had just happened. No one had ever walked away from the Galactic Council before, but then again, no one had ever dealt with humans before. 3 weeks after Ambassador Vasquez walked out of the council chamber, the first human ships began to move. Dr. Kethvar floated in his crystalline observation chamber above New Geneva Station, watching through quantum-enhanced sensors as the evacuation began. As a Zephyrian analyst specializing in species behavior, he had been tasked with monitoring the human response to their rejection. What he observed defied every prediction his mathematical models had generated. The humans were not angry. They were not panicking. Instead, they moved with a calm efficiency that sent cold calculations running through Kethvar's crystalline matrix. On the main display, cargo ships docked with human installations throughout the Centauri sector. But these were not refugee vessels fleeing in disorder. Each ship followed precise schedules, loading specific equipment and personnel according to carefully planned manifests. Nothing was rushed. Nothing was forgotten. Show me the breakdown by category, Kethvar commanded his analysis computer. Data flowed across the display in geometric patterns that hurt most alien minds to observe. The humans were taking everything, not just personal belongings and obvious valuables, but items that made no immediate sense. Medical equipment from hospitals that treated multiple species, mining robots that had been left behind by previous owners, even broken machinery that other species had discarded. More disturbing was what they did with the installations they could not physically remove. Human engineers worked around the clock, not to destroy or sabotage their abandoned bases, but to modify them in ways that Kethvar's computers could not analyze. He switched his attention to Terra Nova, humanity's largest colony world in council space. The evacuation there had been proceeding for 2 weeks, but the orbital platforms remained fully operational. Human technicians continued to maintain life support, power generation, and environmental controls as if nothing had changed. Then, 12 hours before the last human transport departed, every human-built system simultaneously locked itself down. HFY watched in fascination as quantum encryption barriers activated across Terra Nova's infrastructure. The power plants continued running, but their control systems became inaccessible. The orbital elevators kept functioning, but their operating protocols sealed themselves behind mathematical barriers that would take centuries to break. A message flashed on every human-built terminal across the planet. Systems transferred to automated maintenance mode. For technical support, please contact the Free Systems Alliance. No one had heard of the Free Systems Alliance before. The same thing happened on every world humans abandoned. They left behind perfectly functioning infrastructure that no other species could access or modify. It was like inheriting a house where every door had been locked and the keys thrown away. HFY to Council Command. He transmitted through the quantum communication network. I need to speak with Counselor Prime Zethkalar immediately. The connection established within moments. Zethkalar's scarred face appeared on the display, his 4 eyes showing the strain of 3 sleepless weeks. Report, Analyst. Counselor Prime. The human evacuation is not proceeding as expected. They are conducting a systematic withdrawal that suggests extensive advance planning. Zethkalar's claws tapped against his command throne. Explain. They are not fleeing, sir. They are relocating according to a predetermined strategy. Furthermore, they have implemented security measures that effectively deny us access to any technology they developed or modified during their 50 years in council space. The old tribunals, 4 eyes focused intently on HFY. What kind of security measures? Quantum encryption locks that appear to be unbreakable with current council technology. Every human-designed system has been placed in automated mode with access restricted to something called the Free Systems Alliance. For a long moment, Zethkalar said nothing. Then how extensive is this lockout? HFY's form flickered with complex calculations. Preliminary analysis suggests that humans modified or improved approximately 47% of all technological systems in Council. Space during their residency period, that's impossible. I thought so too, Counselor Prime, but the evidence is clear. Humans did not simply use our technology. They quietly optimized it. They improved efficiency ratings, reduced maintenance requirements, and enhanced safety protocols. They did this so gradually and skillfully that most species never realized how dependent they had become on human improvements. Zethkalar leaned forward. Are you telling me that half of our technology will not function without human input? Not exactly, sir. The systems will continue to operate, but at reduced efficiency and without the ability to modify or upgrade them. We have inherited infrastructure that we cannot fully control. On the display, another human ship lifted off from Terra Nova, its cargo bays filled with equipment and personnel. It was the last one. After 50 years of human presence, the planet was empty of their kind, but the cities still had power. The orbital platforms still maintained their positions. The atmospheric processors still cleaned the air. Everything worked perfectly, and none of it could be changed or improved by anyone except humans. Counselor Prime, HFY continued, there is something else. I have been tracking human ship movements beyond our borders. And they are not scattering randomly into deep space. The evacuation appears to be directed toward specific coordinates in the Outer Rim territories. Furthermore, sensor data suggests they are rendezvousing with vessels from several non-council species. Zethkalar's scarred face darkened. Which species? Unknown, sir. But the energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. A new voice interrupted the conversation. Counselor Vexthala materialized as a holographic projection, her crystalline form pulsing with agitation. Zethkalar, we have a problem. The Melodians are asking questions about their membership status. The Verdants have requested a review of their tributary agreements. Even some collective subhives are expressing dissatisfaction with current arrangements. How is this related to the human situation? 3 species have formally requested permission to send diplomatic missions to locate human settlements. They claim they have unfinished business to discuss. HFY felt his mathematical consciousness spinning with new calculations. The humans had not simply walked away from the Galactic Council. They had demonstrated that walking away was possible. For 50,000 years, the Council had maintained order through the simple assumption that membership was necessary for survival. Species joined because they believed they had no choice. The tributary agreements and associate memberships existed because alternatives seemed impossible. But humanity had chosen an alternative, and other species were noticing. "Counselor Prime," Kethvar said quietly, "I believe we may have miscalculated the human response to our membership offer." Zeth Kalar's laugh was bitter. "That is an understatement, analyst. The question now is, what do we do about it?" Before anyone could answer, emergency alerts began flashing across every display in the chamber. The automated voice of the Council's central computer spoke in calm, measured tones. "Alert. System efficiency in Sector 7 has dropped to 78%. Alert. Communication network stability in the Verdant territories has decreased to acceptable minimums. Alert. Manufacturing output in collective space has declined by 15%. The three council members stared at each other in growing horror. "How long since the humans departed?" Zethkalar asked. 3 weeks, 2 days, 14 hours, Kethvar replied automatically. "And our infrastructure is already showing strain." "It appears so, Counselor Prime." In the silence that followed, they all reached the same terrible conclusion. The humans had not been junior partners seeking council approval. They had been the hidden foundation holding galactic civilization together, and now they were gone. 6 weeks after the last human ship disappeared into the outer rim, the collective manufacturing world of Nexus 7 ground to a halt. Prime drone Zekthul stood in the central control chamber, watching with growing panic as production lines slowed to 30% capacity. Around her, thousands of worker drones scuttled frantically between malfunctioning machines, their collective consciousness struggling to understand what was going wrong. The assembly lines still functioned. The power system still operated. The raw materials still flowed through the processing centers, but everything moved with the sluggish inefficiency of a dying organism. "Report status," Zekthul commanded through the hive mind link. Data flooded back from every corner of the vast factory world. The problems were subtle but devastating. Transportation schedules that had once moved with clockwork precision now suffered constant delays. Quality control systems that had maintained perfect standards for decades began producing acceptable but inferior products. Energy distribution networks that had operated at optimal efficiency now wasted power in ways the collective could not identify. Primary manufacturing output down 27%, reported Subprime Colvet. Secondary processing experiencing cascade delays. Tertiary systems operating within minimal parameters but declining. Zekthul felt the confusion ripple through the collective consciousness. The collective had built these factories. They knew every circuit, every program, every mechanical process. Yet somehow their own technology was becoming foreign to them. "Access historical data," she ordered. "Compare current performance to baseline statistics from 60 days ago." The analysis took only moments. What it revealed sent waves of alarm through the hive mind. For the past 50 years, human engineers had been quietly optimizing collective manufacturing processes. They had improved logistics algorithms, streamlined quality control protocols, and enhanced energy efficiency by microscopic amounts that compounded into massive improvements over time. The collective had assumed these enhancements were the result of their own technological advancement. But the optimization programs were locked behind quantum encryption barriers. Without access to the underlying code, the systems were slowly reverting to their original, less efficient configurations. "Contact the Council," Zekthul ordered. "We need human technical assistance immediately." The response came within hours. There were no humans left in Council space to provide assistance. Meanwhile, 3,000 light-years away, the Luminal Energy Distribution Center of Bright Harbor experienced its first power fluctuation in 2 centuries. Conductor Lumisan existed as pure electrical consciousness, flowing through the massive solar collection arrays that powered 17 star systems. Her awareness encompassed every photon captured, every joule transmitted, every watt distributed across the galactic power grid. The fluctuation lasted only 0.003 seconds, but to a being of pure energy, it felt like an eternity of chaos. Diagnostic protocols. Execute. She pulsed through the network. The results were troubling. Somewhere in the vast complexity of the power grid, efficiency was declining. Energy that should have flowed smoothly through the distribution channels was being lost to invisible inefficiencies. Lumi-san traced the problem through millions of connections, following power flows across interstellar distances. What she found made her electrical form pulse with alarm. The grid's load balancing systems were failing. For decades, human-designed algorithms had predicted power demands with incredible accuracy, allowing the luminals to distribute energy exactly where and when it was needed. But those prediction systems now operated like broken calculators, generating forecasts that grew less accurate each day. The power grid still functioned, but massive amounts of energy were being wasted as the system struggled to compensate for its inability to predict demand. Priority transmission to Council Command. Lumi-san broadcasted. Critical infrastructure degradation detected. Human technical consultation required immediately. The reply arrived encoded with frustration. No human technicians available. Seek alternative solutions. But there were no alternative solutions. The Luminals had not fully understood their own systems for 50 years. They had trusted human improvements without questioning how those improvements worked. On the crystal world of harmony, Counselor Vexithala faced her own technological crisis. The quantum communication network that connected all Zephyrian colonies was experiencing random failures that defied analysis. Her crystalline form flickered with rapid calculations as she processed diagnostic data from across Zephyrian space. The failures followed no logical pattern. Communication nodes that had operated flawlessly for centuries would suddenly lose coherence for minutes or hours, then resume normal function. Analysis complete, announced her quantum computer matrix. Communication failures correlate with the absence of human-designed stability protocols. Vexthala's form pulsed with frustration. Explain correlation. Human engineers introduced quantum stabilization algorithms into the communication network 37 years ago. These algorithms prevented cascade failures and quantum entanglement patterns. Without active maintenance of these protocols, the network is experiencing systemic instability. Why were we not informed of this dependency? Records indicate human engineers classified their modifications as routine maintenance upgrades. The changes were implemented gradually and appeared to be natural improvements to Zephyrian technology. Vexthala realized with growing horror that her species had been unconsciously dependent on human expertise for over 3 decades. The quantum communication network that connected Zephyrian civilization was slowly dissolving without human maintenance. In the council chamber, emergency reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Tribunal Empire's military academy shut down when its training simulations stopped responding to instructor commands. The Melodian art worlds lost their interstellar broadcasting capabilities. The verdant agricultural planets experienced crop yield reductions as their environmental management systems operated with declining precision. Counselor Prime Zethkalar stood before the council circle, his scarred face grim as he read report after report of system failures and efficiency losses. How many species are affected? He asked Dr. Kethvar. The Zephyrian analyst's form flickered with complex calculations. All 17 council member species are experiencing some degree of technological degradation. Additionally, 43 associate members and 12 tributary species have reported similar problems. Timeline to critical failure. Unknown Counselor Prime. The degradation follows exponential curves that suggest increasing severity over time. Some systems may fail completely within months. Others may continue operating at reduced efficiency for years. Zethkalar's claws scraped against his command throne. What are our options? 3 possibilities, sir. First, we could attempt to reverse engineer human improvements using our own scientists. Estimated timeline, 15 to 50 years, assuming success. Second option, we could offer better terms to convince humanity to return and resume their technical support role. And third, Kethavar's crystalline form dimmed. We could accept that galactic civilization as we know it is ending. Before Zethkalar could respond, a new alert echoed through the chamber. Priority message incoming from the Melodian Confederation. The message materialized as a complex harmonic pattern that translated to words. The Melodian Confederation formally requests Council permission to withdraw from Council space and seek alliance with human settlements. Within hours, Similar messages arrived from the verdant agricultural worlds and the Star Wanderer nomad fleet. 3 species were ready to follow humanity into the unknown rather than remain in a council that could no longer maintain its own technology. Seth Kalar stared at the messages with growing dread. The Galactic Council had existed for 50,000 years. It had survived wars, plagues, and the rise and fall of a dozen galactic empires, but it might not survive the absence of one stubborn species that had refused to accept second-class status. Kethvar, he said quietly, how long do we have before other species realize that council membership is no longer an advantage? The analyst's calculations were swift and merciless. At current rates of system degradation and political unrest, I estimate 6 months before the council loses its ability to maintain galactic stability. And if more species withdraw, 6 weeks. In the silence that followed, the ancient machinery of the council chamber hummed with slightly less efficiency than it had the day before. And tomorrow it would be slightly worse again. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been running for 18 hours without break. Around the council circle, 17 species argued, pleaded, and threatened in a dozen different languages, while their civilizations slowly crumbled around them. Counselor Prime Zeth Kalar looked older than his 1,000 years as he studied the latest reports. In the 3 months since humanity's departure, infrastructure failures had accelerated beyond all predictions. What had started as minor inefficiencies had become cascade failures that threatened the foundation of galactic society. The collective manufacturing worlds are operating at 40% capacity, reported economic analyst Morgek. Food distribution has failed completely in the outer colonies. 3 worlds are reporting civilian unrest. The luminal power grid is experiencing daily brownouts, added infrastructure coordinator Velnash. Energy waste has increased by 300%. Some systems are shutting down to prevent catastrophic overloads. Seth Kalar's 4 eyes focused on the holographic display showing the galactic map. Red warning indicators covered 2/3 of council space like a plague spreading through the stars. What about our scientific response? He asked. Chief Researcher Thalgev materialized as a shimmering energy field. We have deployed our best minds to reverse engineer human technology. Progress is disappointing. Explain. Human improvements to our systems appear simple on the surface, but they integrate with underlying technologies in ways we do not understand. Each enhancement connects to dozens of other modifications, creating dependency webs that span multiple star systems. The holographic display shifted to show a 3-dimensional network of interconnected systems. The complexity was staggering, millions of tiny improvements linked together in patterns that hurt to look at. Furthermore, Thalgev continued, human encryption methods resist all attempts at analysis. Our quantum computers estimate it would take 17,000 years to break a single algorithm using conventional methods. What about unconventional methods? Asked Counselor Vexathala, her crystalline form pulsing with desperation. We tried. The encryption appears to evolve when attacked, becoming stronger and more complex. It is as if the humans built their security systems to learn from our attempts to break them. Zethakalar felt a cold certainty settling in his mind. Humanity had not simply walked away from the council. They had anticipated this moment and prepared for it with terrifying thoroughness. Sir, interrupted Communications Officer Jelmin, we are receiving another diplomatic message. From whom? The Free Systems Alliance. Every conversation in the chamber stopped. For months, Council intelligence had tried to locate the mysterious alliance that had claimed ownership of human-built technology. Their ships had been detected in deep space, but no one knew where they were based or how large their forces had grown. Display the message. A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed Ambassador Elena Vasquez, looking exactly as she had on the day she walked out of this same room. Behind her stood representatives of at least a dozen species, including 3 that the Council had never seen before. Greetings, Counselor Prime Zethkalar and members of the Galactic Council, Elena said with diplomatic courtesy. The Free Systems Alliance acknowledges your recent difficulties and wishes to extend an offer of assistance. Murmurs rippled around the chamber. Some counselors leaned forward eagerly. Others recoiled as if the hologram might bite them. Our technical specialists are prepared to provide emergency maintenance for critical infrastructure in council space. We can restore power grid efficiency, repair manufacturing systems, and stabilize communication networks. Zethkalar felt hope flicker in his chest, followed immediately by suspicion. What are your terms? Elena's smile was gentle and completely inflexible. Full diplomatic recognition of the Free Systems Alliance as an equal partner in galactic affairs. Immediate cessation of all tributary relationships with associate member species, and formal acknowledgement that no species may be compelled to join the Council against their will. The hope died as quickly as it had been born. You ask us to abandon the fundamental principles of Council governance, Zethkalar said. We ask you to abandon the principles that forced us to leave, Elena replied. The galaxy is changing, Counselor Prime. You can change with it or be left behind by it. And if we refuse your offer, then you refuse our offer. The Alliance will continue to grow and prosper in the Outer Rim. Council space will continue to decline. Eventually, when your current system proves completely unworkable, individual species will make their own choices about their future. The hologram flickered and vanished, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. She's bluffing, Councillor McLaurin of the Tribunal Empire finally said. Humanity cannot have built a functioning interstellar alliance in 3 months. It's impossible. But even as he spoke, reports were arriving that made his words sound hollow. Intelligence Agent Corden projected sensor data into the chamber. Our deep space reconnaissance has detected massive construction activity in the Centauri Drift region. Energy signatures suggest at least 40 inhabited worlds and 12 major industrial complexes. 40 worlds? Vexthala's crystalline form flickered with disbelief. The humans only had 47 colonies in Council space. These are not all human worlds, Counselor. We have identified melodian harmonic frequencies, verdant biosignatures, and energy patterns from at least 6 species not in our databases. Zethkalar stared at the data with growing dread. How many ships? Unknown, sir. The Alliance appears to be using some form of stealth technology that makes accurate counts impossible. But based on industrial capacity estimates, they may have more vessels than the entire Council fleet. The revelation hit the chamber like a physical blow. In 3 months, humanity had not just survived their exile, they had built an alliance larger and more technologically advanced than the civilization that had rejected them. There's more, Corden continued reluctantly. 3 more Council member species have formally requested permission to open diplomatic relations with the Alliance. The Wanderer fleet is already moving toward Alliance space. The Agricultural Consortium is threatening to withdraw unless we provide immediate technical assistance. Which we cannot provide, Thalgev added bitterly, because we do not understand our own technology without human help. Councillor Prime Zethkalar looked around the chamber at faces that showed fear, anger, and desperation in equal measure. The Galactic Council had ruled through strength for 50,000 years. But strength meant nothing when your ships couldn't fly efficiently, your factories couldn't produce goods, and your communication networks failed at random intervals. Options, he said quietly. We could militarize, suggested McLaurin. Force the Alliance to return our technical specialists. With what ships? Asked Admiral Korthik.
Half our fleet is grounded for maintenance problems we cannot solve.
The other half operates at reduced efficiency. We could negotiate, offered Vexthala. Perhaps some compromise is possible. They want us to abandon tributary relationships, Zethkalar replied. That would destroy Council authority overnight. Maybe Council authority is already destroyed, said a quiet voice from the observation gallery. Every head turned toward the speaker. Representative Lyrion of the Melodian Confederation stood slowly, her crystalline vocal cords producing harmonics of sadness and resignation. With respect, Councillor Prime, what authority do we actually possess? We cannot maintain our own infrastructure. We cannot solve our own technological problems. 3 member species are preparing to leave. How is this different from complete collapse? The question hung in the chamber like an accusation. Around the circle, councillors who had wielded absolute power for centuries struggled to find an answer. Finally, Zethkalar spoke. Agent Corden, prepare a reconnaissance mission to Alliance space. We need to understand what humanity has built. Sir, if we are going to make a decision about the future of the Council, we need to know what alternative they are offering. The old tribunal's scarred face was grim with acceptance. For the first time in 50,000 years, The Galactic Council was about to send ambassadors to petition a civilization they had rejected. The irony was bitter, but not nearly as bitter as the alternative. Commander Yixthon of the Tribunal Empire had expected to find scattered human settlements barely surviving in the galactic wilderness. Instead, he found himself staring at the most advanced civilization he had ever seen. The reconnaissance fleet of 12 council ships hung in space at the edge of what humans called the Free Systems Alliance. What stretched before them was not the desperate refugee camps Yixthon had imagined, but a thriving confederation that made council space look primitive by comparison. "Sensor report," he ordered, his 4 eyes fixed on the main display. "Sir," replied Navigation Officer Tekmar, "I am detecting 47 inhabited star systems within scanning range. Energy output suggests a total population exceeding 12 billion sentient beings. How many of those are human systems?" "Approximately 60%, sir. The remainder appear to be Melodian, Verdant, Star Wanderer, and unknown species." Yixthon's claws tapped against his command chair. In 4 months, humanity had not only survived their exile, but had built something larger than many council member nations. "Unknown species?" "Yes, sir. I am detecting at least 6 different technological signatures that do not match any species in our databases. Energy patterns suggest they are highly advanced." Through the viewing ports, Yixthon could see the evidence himself. Massive space stations hung in perfect formation around twin suns. Ships of dozens of different designs moved between worlds with casual efficiency. Most disturbing of all, the technology appeared to be generations ahead of anything in council space. "Sir," interrupted Communications Officer Voralin, "we are being hailed." "By whom?" "Unknown vessel approaching from planetary orbit. Design suggests human origin, but the technology readings are unusual." On the display, a sleek ship appeared that was clearly built by human hands but incorporated design elements from multiple species. Its hull showed the flowing curves of Melodian aesthetic merged with the crystalline efficiency of Zephyrian mathematics and the organic practicality of verdant bioengineering. "This is Admiral Sarah, Chen of the Free Systems Alliance vessel Harmony," came a familiar human voice. "Commander Yixthon, you and your fleet are welcome in Alliance space. Please follow my ship to neutral ground where we can talk." Yixthon felt a chill run through his scaled hide. Admiral Chen had been a mid-level human officer when humanity departed council space. Now she commanded vessels that his sensors could barely analyze. "Admiral," he replied carefully, "I come seeking information about Alliance intentions toward council space." "I understand, Commander, and I have information to share. But first, your ship is experiencing a critical malfunction in your quantum drive containment system. Please shut down your engines and prepare to receive emergency assistance." Yixthon's 4 eyes widened in alarm. "Engineering report drive status immediately." The response came back with barely controlled panic. "Sir, quantum containment is approaching critical failure. We need to shut down within minutes or risk core breach." Before Yixthon could give the order, Alliance ships appeared around his fleet like materializing ghosts. They moved with impossible speed and coordination, their movements so smooth they seemed to bend space itself. "Alliance vessels deploying emergency repair drones," Admiral Chen announced. "Please do not be alarmed. This will only take a few minutes." Yixthon watched in fascination and growing fear as small machines swarmed over his ships. Within 10 minutes, warning lights stopped flashing and engines hummed with greater efficiency than they had shown in years. "Repairs complete," Chen announced. "Your drives are now operating at optimal efficiency. Please follow us to Haven Station." The trip to Haven Station took 6 hours and shattered every assumption Yixthon had made about human capabilities. The Alliance vessels moved through space using propulsion systems that his engineers could not identify. They communicated through networks that carried more data than the entire Council communication grid. Most shocking of all, they seemed to coordinate with a precision that rivaled the collective hive mind. Haven Station was a marvel that defied classification. Built around a small moon, it incorporated architectural elements from dozens of species in a harmony that should have been impossible. Spires of living crystal grew alongside structures of pure energy and buildings that seemed to be made from solidified music. Population: 8 million beings from 23 different species. Admiral Chen explained as they docked. Haven Station serves as our diplomatic and cultural center. In the station's main conference room, Yixthon found himself face-to-face with representatives of the Alliance leadership. What he saw there changed his understanding of everything. Humans sat alongside Melodians whose songs had influenced the station's architecture. Verdance shared space with crystalline beings he didn't recognize. Star wanderers floated in environmental bubbles next to energy creatures that pulsed with contained starlight. Commander Yixthon, Admiral Chen began, "Thank you for accepting our invitation. I understand you have questions about Alliance intentions." "Among other things," Yixthon replied carefully. "The Council is concerned about the rapid growth of your Alliance." "I'm sure they are," Chen said with a slight smile. "Let me start by showing you what we've built." The holographic display filled with images that left Yixthon speechless. Worlds being terraformed using technologies that worked in weeks instead of centuries. Space habitats that housed millions of beings in perfect environmental harmony. Ships that traveled between stars in days instead of months. "How?" was all Yixthon could manage. "Cooperation," replied a Melodian delegate, her words carrying harmonic undertones of joy. "When species work together as equals, sharing knowledge freely, advancement happens faster than anyone imagined. But the technical complexity is manageable when you don't waste energy on dominance hierarchies," added a verdant representative. "Plants understand this instinctively. Every part of an ecosystem contributes according to its nature." Admiral Chen leaned forward. "Commander, humanity didn't leave Council space because we hated you. We left because we outgrew the limitations of hierarchical thinking. The Council operates on the assumption that progress requires control, that peace requires submission, that cooperation requires coercion. And you believe otherwise? We proved otherwise. In 4 months, 23 species have chosen to join the Alliance voluntarily, not because they were conquered or intimidated, but because they saw a better way to live." Yixthon studied the faces around the table. He saw no fear, no resentment, no signs of the political tensions that plagued Council deliberations. These beings genuinely seemed to trust each other. "What about species that choose not to join?" "They are welcome to remain independent," Chen replied. "The Alliance does not require membership for trade, diplomatic relations, or mutual assistance. We believe that forced association creates resentment and weakness." "Then why did you lock down the technology in Council space?" Chen's expression grew serious. "Because that technology was built through Alliance principles: cooperation, equality, and voluntary association. We could not leave it to be used for purposes that contradict those principles. The Council is suffering massive infrastructure failures. Yes, and we have offered to help, with conditions that reflect our values. Abandoning tributary relationships would destroy Council authority." "Commander," Chen said gently, "what authority does the Council actually possess? You came here in ships that we had to repair. Your communication networks fail regularly. Your manufacturing worlds operate at reduced capacity. What exactly are you trying to preserve?" The question hit Yixthon like a physical blow. He had spent 3 days traveling through Alliance space, seeing technological marvels and genuine cooperation between species that had never existed under Council rule. "The Council has maintained peace for 50,000 years, he said, weakly. "The Council has maintained control for 50,000 years, corrected a Star Wanderer delegate. "Peace built on subjugation is not peace at all, it's just delayed conflict. And when that control becomes impossible to maintain," added Chen, "the peace collapses into chaos. The Alliance offers a different model: peace built on mutual benefit and voluntary cooperation." Yixthon looked around the room one more time. Representatives of 23 species, working together without fear or coercion, building something unprecedented in galactic history. What happens if the Council refuses to change? "Then the Council refuses to change," Chen replied simply. "Individual species will make their own choices about their future. Some will choose to stay with the old system until it completely collapses. Others will choose to try something new. And humanity? Humanity chose to try something new 4 months ago. We're quite happy with the results." As if to emphasize her point, an alert chimed softly through the station. "Attention. The Zephyrian colony ship Bright Future has arrived requesting Alliance membership. Diplomatic teams prepare for welcome protocols." Chen smiled at Yixthon's shocked expression. "That makes 24 species, Commander. The galaxy is changing. The only question is whether the Council will change with it or be left behind by it." 2 days later, Yixthan's fleet began the journey back to Council space. As Haven Station disappeared behind them, he composed his report for Counselor Prime Zeth Kalar.